Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, I have a statement I'd like to make on behalf of the Mayor and City Council. I wish to acknowledge the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has been a steady and constant in our lives, and today, after a reign of more than 70 years, we mourn her passing. Her unwavering commitment to public service has truly been something to behold and likely won't be seen again. To most, she was a public figurehead, but to those who loved her, she was also a wife, mother, grandmother, and a great-grandmother. On behalf of the City Council, I extend my sincere condolences to those who knew and loved her. Now we will begin with this meeting of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee and start off with a roll call. Mr. Sarsfield.
So for the members of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee, Councillor Campbell.
Present.
Councillor John Middleton Hope.
Present.
Councillor Parker.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt-Rempo.
Here.
All members are present and accounted for, and quorum has been established.
Thank you. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people and the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We'll begin with the adoption of the agenda. I will do the adoption. That the agenda of the Committee, Safety Standing Policy Committee on September the 8th, 2022 be adopted as presented. Any comments?
Just make a reminder that people online, if they have their things on mute, that might be a good idea.
Okay. All right. Seeing none, all in favor? That is passed. A consent agenda from Councillor Parker. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting held on June 9th, 2022 be approved and the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Councillor Parker?
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor? That is passed. Getting to our presentations, we have representatives from the cab associations here? Good. Is that Linda? No, sorry. Cheryl. Cheryl, okay, Cheryl and great. And are you here to make a presentation or talk to us, or are you just answering questions? All right, sure. Why don't you step up to the microphones?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, may as well state your name just so we know who you are and who you're representing.
My name is Michael Arend. I am one of the managing directors of 94 Cabs.
Can I just get you to speak into the mic when you? Yeah. Sorry.
My name is Michael Arend, and I'm one of the managing directors of 94 Cabs.
Okay.
My name is Cheryl McMillan. I'm the owner of Fifth Avenue Cabs.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to say before we start asking a few questions? Any questions from our members of the committee here?
First of all, can I just see the resolution? If there's going to be a resolution, do we have a resolution I can see on there if I can refer to my questions maybe through the resolution?
Ultimately, it's we're going to recommend that administration provide a response to the proposed changes that are coming forth.
Okay, so my question is, I remember asking this a while ago, and maybe I feel bad because I thought we weren't even in this business industry anymore. Like licensing, I totally understand we have to be in licensing, but I remember back in the day, and the argument was, why is council in the business of setting rates or even deciding what rates do, and that it's up to the private sector to decide what that will be? And I thought we were going that direction, that we were no longer going to be in the rate business. So can someone gives me context? And second of all, why would it be at this meeting under this SPC versus a regular council meeting? So maybe why don't you answer the second question first so we know why it's here. Oh, okay, perfect, thank you.
So in answer to the question why it's here as opposed to going to council, normally it would go to council if there was a bylaw proposed, but right now it's just a submission. And so based on the response from the committee to the request, then a bylaw may be drafted and then ultimately would go to council.
So, okay, my follow-up to that, and thank you, and I understand what you're saying there. So why wouldn't this be go to an economic board, an economic policy? And this is, why, yeah, go ahead.
Because regulatory service is under this committee.
Thank you, that helps me out. I just want to make sure I got that. Okay, so perfect. So my first question was, why are we still in the business, I shouldn't use that word. Why are we still the regulators of these rates on these cabs still? Or the cab industry?
Oh, hi. For the chair to Councillor Parker, if I recall, because we've had two discussions since the last, we had discussion during the Uber times and everything else. The difference is that in some of the larger cities, like Calgary, for instance, they have a taxi commission. So they have an independent body that set off and does that, but it's quite an expensive undertaking to have a taxi commission and all the stuff that goes with that. So we did talk at one time about whether or not we're going to have a taxi commission, et cetera, but the costs that we talked about just didn't jive with the city. It's just too small a city to have a big taxi commission, and a lot of the other cities that we've compared the rates to, whether it be Medicine Hat, Red Deer, Airdrie, they still do it the same way. They get people to request, and then it's put into some kind of they request through council as opposed to going through a transit commission. That's basically the difference here.
My question to you folks then, and you're just representing your business, you're not representing the industry, am I correct?
We're here to speak on behalf of the industry.
Okay, so
Or at least a majority of.
you want City Hall to get involved in regards to the rates that you guys can and cannot charge, like minimums and all that, maximums? Do you want us to do that?
I do think that it's probably because there's no taxi commission.
Just pull your mic, just so people can hear you.
Because there's no taxi commission, I think there does need to be some regulation, because you get little independent companies that may overcharge in middle of the night and somebody complains. So I think something needs to regulate the prices. But I agree, we're too small for a taxi commission here.
So I'm just trying to, and I had these same questions years ago, and Mr. Enns, I think you and I probably had this conversation, so a long time ago, I'm trying to, maybe you can't answer this question, but maybe Mr. Enns or someone from that department. If the logic is that we're there to protect and make sure there's consistency and all that, well, could you also say, well, the city should get involved in the price of bread? Make sure bread is priced a certain way, so when someone has to go to at 12 o'clock at night to get bread should not be charged $10. Shouldn't we let the free market decide? And the city should only be there to make sure that people have the proper licenses, which I agree with, for operating a business. Why should we be getting involved in the prices? I'm trying to get my head around this.
Well, that is, sorry. Okay, that's a political question. Okay, so I that's at a different level than myself. That's the elected level to determine not whether it is. I can tell you why that cities do regulate rates. I mean, for instance, some places and by the way, this is a maximum rate. It's not a minimum rate. Yeah. So this goes to the maximum rate. Taxis have been known. I myself have gone to some Caribbean island, and you don't know what money you're jumping off an airplane. You're jumping into a taxi. You don't have anything to know what the rate is, right? I know some places you can barter for a ride, but in this case, I think some citizens, and I'm not saying, I'm just representing what some people say, like to know what the basic rate is going to be. For instance, if they jump into a cab at their house and get to NMAX, they know exactly what the rate's going to be. Some people like that comfort, but it's a political decision whether or not you want to be involved in these rates at all. Yes.
I have further questions, but I don't want to hog, so I'll pass it on to my colleagues online and in person here.
Thank you. I guess my first question to our two speakers, Michael and Cheryl. I see that like the proposed increases up to 33%. I just want to, is that sustainable? I guess is the big question. I mean, will the public accept that? And what kind of challenges do you find with that kind of increase? 33%, I think, where was it? Changed from 75 cents to $1 per minute waiting time. That's one of them anyway. And, I mean, the changes you're proposing, obviously you thought hard about it, but can it work?
I think, first of all, the 33% is the highest increase, and it is strictly on wait time. That means should a customer decide to exit the cab on mid-trip and run into the liquor store, run into the drugstore, or pick up a pack of smokes while the cab is still sitting there. The increase is going from proposed to go to $1 from 75 cents. This is on the higher end. The major increase that we're looking for is an increase in the per kilometer rate, which, based on the way the meters are set up on the eighth of a mile, puts us into the 18 to 20%. It's also the number one factor in determining what the overall cost of the trip is. Seldom, I shouldn't say seldom, but most trips are A to B without a lot of stops. We do have stops at red lights for trains, constructions, accidents, that sort of thing, where the time charge does come into play. And this is downtime that the driver's involved in. Quite often, if it's a train, most drivers turn the meters off. It's beyond the customer's control, it's beyond the driver's control, and they have the ability to turn it off, where customers have the opportunity to ask the driver, hey, do you mind turning it off, or can we look at a discount, right? All of that plays into each individual trip, ultimately comes down to the driver, but it's time that the driver's spending on the road with the customer in the car.
Obviously, price of gases went through the roof. This was a real difficult time, I'm sure, for cab drivers and for the consumer. And price of gas now down to whatever, $1.42. It's a volatile situation, I guess. What are you're proposing? What is the? Oh, well, anyway, talk about the gas prices and its impact on the business. You know, I mean, as it goes up and down.
So, because this is based on a brokerage-style business and the drivers lease the vehicles, they're their own independent operators, they pay for the gas themselves. So each individual driver is taking that hit. Gas, unfortunately, is not even the biggest factor, although it is a daily increase, right? Insurance rates have gone up and that sort of thing as well, right? Lethbridge tends to maintain a higher than average price of gasoline per liter throughout the province. A lot of places are well into the 30s, I believe, through the province. We're usually one of the first to go up, and we're one of the slower ones to come down. It's been quite a hit, especially when we were in the $1.90 a region, right? It's a fair bit of gas for a vehicle that runs and drives all night or day.
When you're like, because most of this is going to go to the driver itself, that's making money. So a driver that usually spends $40 or $45 in gas is now paying $80. So it comes straight out of his income when the gas is higher. Meanwhile, everything else in the economy is going up. So, I mean, just trying to retain drivers that, like, can they make it? You know, like we're having a harder time retaining our drivers, and the service that we provide to the community, I think, is important. Like the school boards, so many places that use us, that if you don't have the drivers and you can't get the drivers in, it's really hard to provide the service for like the school boards and other contracts that we have throughout town.
Thank you. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. I just wanted to reflect on Mr. Enz's comment, comparing us to a Caribbean nation where you get off on vacation, Mr. Enz. I don't think there's a lot of comparison between jumping off in Jamaica and hopping a cab and picking up a cab in in Lethbridge at the airport. So maybe a different example might.
You're correct that that example, I got thrown off a little bit there and I came up with a tough example. Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
In researching some of my file here, the reasons why cities regulate taxi rates is to ensure public safety, or not just taxi rates, but ensure the whole taxi industry.
The industry, yeah.
Is to ensure public safety, consumer protection, and service quality. And I guess the second one there is consumer protection. We actually have to make sure that each cab's meter is correctly aligned, and our bylaw officers will go in and make sure that they're actually, that's what's being charged, right? But if this was a free-for-all and it was more of a whatever company wanted to charge, it would have to be a totally different setup, and then we would have to discuss, I guess, as a city, how we would protect the consumer from maybe a meter that didn't work properly or something such as that. So, yeah, ensure public safety.
That has absolutely nothing to do with the rates that they want to charge. That has to do with the efficacy of the instrumentation. And so at the end of the day, if the instrument, it's like a speedometer. If the speedometer is not working properly, that's problematic, but that's something that we have to deal directly with the service provider. At the end of the day, what these people charge to citizens of Lethbridge, quite candidly, why is the city involved in it? I don't understand it.
Well, like I said, that is a political question. If council was of the mind that they didn't want to control taxi rates, then that's something to consider.
Thank you. A question to the taxi cab owners. Do you not have signage in each one of your cabs that articulates what the prices are?
We do. It's provided by the city of Lethbridge, puts a sticker in our cab.
So
It
if I get into a cab at the airport, I know what it's going to cost me to get to Paradise Canyon, $50.
Relatively, the signage actually indicates the maximum allowed to be charged in the city of Lethbridge.
Yeah.
Individual companies can charge less. We cannot go over.
So if for some,
Just a reminder, we should keep this to questions, and we'll get into debate later.
that is a question.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we're going down the right road. Thanks.
Thank you. There was a question. At the end of the day, what happens if we don't approve this and if City Council doesn't approve it?
We're stuck working at the rates since the last increase. Because the drivers make their money directly off the fares, they're stuck at the rates since that last increase. So there's no cost of living adjustment. The income that they have is strictly based off of 6 to 8 year old income.
May I also, I don't know necessarily that you should approve the amounts that were, or
Right.
just the regulatory part of that. This is the maximum amount that you can charge. Just so that if there is one guy that gets a cab and goes out there in the middle of the night on a bar rush and charges some guy $400 to get home, it is a regulated thing, that something like that. But as far as what the rates are, it just needs to be in the bylaw. I don't know that, if you want to approve it or, yes or no, but it just needs to be stated so that they're there. Like if you didn't have whether it was higher or lower, it just needs to be, it needs to be on the sign so that the people are aware.
Fair enough. And you've presented some of the challenges that you're facing, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. And my personal take is, I frankly don't care what you charge. It's the market will decide. People, if you have a nice cab, you run a good operation, all that, they're going to go your cabs. You probably offer a certain service. You probably have prompt service. You answer your phone quickly. So you have that. There's competition, all that. Let's say we change this, but let's say you say I upgraded our fleet. We have these nice Cadillacs. We want to pick up, these people at the airport, these guys that come in every year. I want to charge $35 or $45 and all that. If we had this, you wouldn't be able to do that, would you? You'd have to classify yourself something different, like a limousine or something like that. You wouldn't be. Am I correct in that? We're kind of holding you back. We're kind of holding you back by putting this here, aren't we? In some way.
To some extent, you'll find that this sort of scenario is exactly what happens with Uber, where they have the different levels of Uber. You can just get a regular car. You can get a high-grade Cadillac or a more expensive model of vehicle, right? And based on the way Uber charges, you are paying extra for that service.
Are you concerned that when you have to, your staff need, inflation, you need to increase the rates, are you concerned that you're at the beckoning of council deciding how much you can charge? Does that concern you at all?
To an extent, it does. I think I've only been in the industry for a few years, and the rates have been set, I think, at a pretty fair level, both for drivers and for the customers. And drivers can earn a decent income, but over time, right, inflation has taken hold, and the money that they're earning just isn't.
And my last question
Yep.
to you, and I appreciate these answers from both the administration and yourself, is, but you feel, and you speak on behalf of the industry, but you do feel reassured knowing that the city is coming there and making sure that the meter's running properly, that everything's being done so the consumer is protected. Like, it gives consistency across the board. But you would support that, and you think that's a good idea?
I personally believe that a little bit of open competition is good amongst the businesses, and we have that.
I'm talking about in regards, I'm
But
talking
with
in
regards to the meters being
meters, how they're-
safe, our meters are tested and they're sealed. And anytime work is done on a meter or anything that involves the meter, the seal is broken and it needs to be retested. I look at from my kids going home from the bar, catching a cab, I sure want them to be charged by a meter that's working properly. And
But who certifies that meter? Does the city do the certifying? and all
City
that?
does the
That's
certification
my
based
question
on a
is-
test run.
Yeah, my question is, do you feel good knowing that you have a third party such as the city doing that for not only to protect yourself as a competitor, but also the rider?
Absolutely.
Perfect, that's what I wanted to hear. So the city does have a role. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the presenters for coming forward to answer some questions. I guess the first question I have is how do the rate increases compare to other cities of a similar size?
I'm sorry I missed that. There was a phone ringing.
Oh, sorry.
Council
do-
Parker.
Most of the cities in Alberta, the major cities like Edmonton has already asked for an increase. Calgary, Medicine Hat, all of them are kind of following. We're all kind of doing the same thing. So it is in their proposal that we wrote down about the other cab companies and when their increases. I haven't updated this since we originally put it in. So maybe some of these have gone through. But there are like Calgary, Medicine Hat, Edmonton. I don't know, did Red Deer go?
Red Deer actually revolves around a minimum charge, not a maximum. They take the stance of protecting the income of the driver.
Okay. And how do our increases compare to those other cities? Like, are we about in line with the other cities, higher, lower, midpoint? How do we compare to those other cities, particularly even Red Deer, which is similar in size?
There was this whole thing
I don't think we have a lot of information on what's gone through. As I said, Red Deer maintains.
Sorry, into the mic. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Red Deer, as I pointed out, charges minimums and allow the open market to take care of things after that. They take the stance of protecting the income of the drivers. So as long as they're hitting the minimum and the drivers are making their income, the companies are able to turn the meters up. They still need to certify that the meters are working properly, and then they post their rates. 94 Cabs does have a brokerage in Red Deer, and so we have decals in our vehicles there that indicate what we charge.
Okay, so would that be a better system for us to look at? Like, would that be a preferred system to be looked at then?
I think there's pluses and minuses to both systems. It's not something I've given a lot of thought to. I spend most of my focus here in Lethbridge, and it's been a pretty decent system, I've found.
Okay. The next question I had is, and this sort of ties back to what some of my colleagues have asked, and then also we have the city doing the regulation of this because we don't have enough cab companies or a large enough group to form their own regulatory group. Are we at a point where we need to start looking at that and planning for it?
I think we've got a ways to go yet.
Okay. Okay. And then just one other question I had: how are you finding things in competition with rideshare services right now, particularly after COVID? Are you seeing a lot of competition from the rideshare services and their different levels of service, or has that declined since before COVID?
COVID is a bad one. 94 Cabs experienced a lot of growth through COVID.
Okay.
We did very well. I do know that our competitors, I think, had a harder time with COVID. So it's hit everybody differently. The ride sharing programs, there's a few drivers out there. They're very irregular. It's hard to say how many vehicles they have at any given time. I do know pre-COVID, based on the lack of drivers that they had and that they were building up, university students were getting charged sometimes $50, $60 to and from the bar on typically what's a $20 trip in a cab. So it's great for making money. But, you know, so I'm not sure where rideshare is right now. The cabs have definitely all had different experiences with COVID. There is an increase. We have more students in town again, which is nice. So there is a bit of an increase. This is really our first fall with the returns of the students. So what's going to happen really remains to be seen.
Okay. Okay. And I have one follow-up question then, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
How are you finding recruitment, employment recruitment? Is that a challenge for you right now in Lethbridge? Easier? How are you finding recruitment for employees right now?
Recruiting is very, very difficult. We get a lot of responses, most international, unfortunately. But we compete with a lot of trucking, and with graduated licensing in play, and insurance requirements, you know, we look at drivers needing to be 25 to drive at 94 Cabs. They need to have a Class 4 license. They need to have a nearly clean driver's license. It's hard to get all of those things and somebody who's available to come and work either a day shift or a night shift. We've been actively right now hiring for a number of positions with the increase in the local population of the students coming back. And I would say out of 45 applicants, I've had 3 that have qualified, 2 for part-time, and have been unable to fulfill a full-time position.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I had for now.
Thank you. Councillor Parker, is your phone off?
And I apologize,
Okay.
for
That's
that.
all right.
My question is to administration. So if we as a council, not as this committee, but if council wanted to get out of the business of just price regulating, but still want to stay into the business of making sure that cabs are properly licensed, that they have a meter that's properly running and this and that, would you need a resolution from council for that direction?
Yes, we would.
Okay. And please correct me wrong, didn't we give that resolution a while back? Whatever happened, wasn't there a resolution back in the day, Mr. Enns? Or was there a resolution that I thought we were gonna get out of that? That's why I'm just kind of going through my memory here.
I remember there was discussions. I don't remember if there was an actual
Okay, there was
resolution
never an
or not,
actual.
but I remember this discussion, and I believe you brought it up last time as well.
I do
Yes.
remember, that's why I remember this. I'm like, that's why I was kind of taken back for that. But that's, well, I'll take it upon myself if one of my other colleagues, of course, I don't know the political winds at the time, but I'll look at bringing something forward. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from councillors? Just how, I guess just generally speaking, how confident are you moving forward in the business? And how important are these rate increases overall to sustaining cabs in Lethbridge?
Right now, I believe we're getting by. Drivers are continually asking for increased rates because they'd like to see their incomes go up to match inflation. Over time, I truly believe that they'll find a better place to go and work where they can possibly make more money or get a cost of living adjustment or a performance increase.
Anything else any of you would like to add, or? Okay. Councillor Parker, will you take the resolution? What is the resolution? Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that administration provide a response to the proposed changes to the Lethbridge License Bylaw and report back to the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee by February the 9th, 2023.
Would it come back to us?
Yes, to the committee.
Okay, perfect. And I think that would probably be, Mr. Enns, did you have a question at all? Does that work good with your timelines there? Because I just, okay. Perfect. First of all, any questions regards to the resolution? Then I'll go into debate if there's not any.
Okay, we have no questions.
Well, thank you. And I know it's an important issue, and it's important. We're dealing with people's livelihoods and their entrepreneurial spirit. And I believe that the city does have a role in making sure certain things do occur. In regards, this is my personal take, in regards to pricing, that's something that I don't think the city should get involved in, and I'll take it upon myself to bring a resolution probably simultaneously when that report comes back. It would probably be the most fitting time to do that. So, but I also expect your industry to reach out to members of council in the weeks and months to come. If you bring a suggestion or an idea forward, let us know as well. So not only just the members around this table, including Deputy Mayor Schmidt-Rempel, but any member of council, because at the end of the day, it'll be a council decision of all 9 of us. So I think you answered our questions, but and I appreciate you representing industry as well. Unless there's any other debate, I would.
Anybody else want to add? I take that your closing. Question's been called. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Arend and Ms. McMillan, for your time here. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Mr. Rob Von Spronsen, Chair of the Lethbridge Police Commission, on the Lethbridge Police Commission update. Welcome, Mr. Van Spronsen. And I see the chief is here as well. Welcome.
Yeah, we have the chief here as well. So I just want to thank this committee for listening to us, to have this presentation, give an opportunity for you to ask us some questions. We wanted to take a look at 3 things. Oh, goodness, there we go. So we want to take a look at the response to the provincial directive, the action plan. I want to just give a brief update on the strategic plan from the commission, and then also our annual plan. So those are the 3 things that we wanted to kind of bring to your attention and to give you opportunities to ask any questions on. Okay, so on the next slide there, this is the one. So on April the 12th, we sent a letter to the Justice Minister, at that time would be Minister Shandro, as well as the Mayor's office. We gave a report to them about the action plan. And as you are aware, the action plan was instituted by then Minister Madu, who had some concerns about public confidence in the LPS. And so the LPS and the Commission developed their action plan. We presented a report. With that report that we presented on April the 12th, we made the request that the minister consider this to be a final report. We have felt that we have sufficiently restructured the LPS, and we felt that the concerns that were addressed by the minister, we've dealt with. And so we made the request that this be a final report and bring some closure to the action plan. We didn't want to bring it to the public at that point because we wanted to wait and see what the minister's response was in case he said, sorry, that we have to make some bigger changes. But we did receive a letter from the minister a couple of weeks ago where he indicated that he felt that this was, the request would be granted, that this would be a final report with the proviso, and that was something that we had asked to as a commission, that we roll in these the plan into strategic planning and moving forward. We understand that this is a living document and that the concerns that were made mention by the minister, we are going to continue to follow up on. So that's really what this was about. So the report, I think, is in your package. So that's the final report there. We dealt with 5 pillars: ethics and accountability, leadership development, employee wellness and mental health education, database access, and communication strategies. So as of the April 1, we had 37 of the 52 items were completed. We had some ongoing matters that we continued to work through. I guess what I wanted to say was we don't want to see this as simply as a checklist. We did 52 items, so therefore we're finished. We see this as a living document. It's ongoing, and we want to roll this into our strategic planning. So I just wanted to say thank you to the LPS, especially to the chief, to the executive for the work that they did, and I want to make a special thank you to the police officers who've been working under the plan, and I think feeling that there's a bit of pressure there. They've responded well, and they've done a tremendous job, so I just want to thank them for that. As a commission, we are committed to our role as governance and oversight, and we rolled a lot of that stuff into our strategic planning. I just wanted to say one item that's coming up yet as part of the action plan was an inquiry that the LERB was asked to do by the minister. That inquiry looks at the database management and the policies and practices along the database, and that's going to be held in the spring of 2023. So that's still upcoming yet. We're confident that the inquiry will find very positive developments and that we've meet and are exceeding all the standards that are set out. So the next thing is the strategic plan, and you'll see this is a good sort of segue into that. We also met in April of 2022 on the strategic plan. We had our 7 members, 2 council members, and we invited the chief to come in on the last day. We had a bit of a retreat, and we developed our strategic plan there. And you'll see there that our strategic plan really has to do with efficient and effective policing for the city of Lethbridge, and our values are trustworthiness, transparency, and accountability. So there's sort of an overview of some of the things that we talked about. It was a great 2-day retreat. We spent a lot of time talking about the future of the Lethbridge Police Commission and our role. And that was one of the things that also the minister had made mention in his letter too, that he wanted to make sure that the commission understood its role of governance, and we spent a lot of time talking about that. So it was a very, very productive and good meeting. So out of that, and we did present this to the community shortly after this in a town hall, but we looked at 4 principles or 4 priorities: governance, organizational excellence, partnerships, and engagement. I just want to highlight a couple of things there. In terms of organizational excellence, that's something that we really want to stress here. We really would love to see our organization continue on the path of excellence. That means trying to find secure funding for the service. We want to look at evaluation of policies and practices. We want to look at transparency, succession planning, recruitment to the Lethbridge Police Commission, as well as to the LPS, and change management. So those are the things that we've been focusing in on. In terms of partnership, I want to highlight that one too. We want to make sure we can leverage resources. We talk there about mutually beneficial solutions. Because the LPS, I think, has been seen by the community as sort of a catch-all, and everything seems to land on their plate. And the commission wanted to make sure that we really focus in on what our job is, and to leverage those partnerships that help us, and maybe to say to other partnerships, you know, that's not our department, that's something that needs to be looked at by somebody else. So what you saw in your package is details. What we did is we took a look at our 4 priorities. We then broke it down into certain outcomes, and then we took action items for each of those outcomes. It's an ongoing living document. We're still working through that. And we see this taking us over for the next 4 years. And then the last thing I just want to bring to your attention is the annual plan. Is something that comes out of bylaw 5969, number 35 in the bylaw talks about the duties of the commission and how we're to present to council an estimate of all of the funding and the level of police service. We're coming up to the end of the current budget cycle, and we're looking for a new one. So our priorities right now are finishing off the year, dealing with the budget cut. As you're aware, the $1 million budget cut for the last 2 years. And then looking at presenting to council at the end of September, the 2023 to 2026 budget, where we'll outline the monies that were required, the levels of service. I want to just sort of finish this off with a personal reflection. I've been on the commission for 6 years now, and I think the first 3 years, we as a commission were in reactive mode. We were putting out fires, we were dealing with issues and concerns, and we always felt like we were trying to play catch up. The last 3 years have been much, much better. We've been trying to be much more proactive and trying to get on top of things. We looked at strategic planning, we've done community engagement. These are things that we haven't necessarily done in the past, so I feel very confident, very good about the direction that the commission is going and the police service is going, moving us forward in the next 4 years. As I said before, the police service of 2017 is not the same as it is now in 2022. It's a growing city, and the police service is growing with it, and we need to keep on top of that. So that's my presentation, and I'll be open to any questions from city or from the commission.
Thank you very much for the report. I just off the top, I was just looking, you know, when you come up with your strategic priorities, governance, organizational excellence, partnership, and engagement, of those, what would you say was the biggest challenge that you had, and what are you most satisfied with coming up with what your strategic priorities became, you know, as you reflect?
So there's sort of 2 things. The first one was governance, and that was one of the issues that the minister, Mr. Madu, had mentioned. He was concerned that maybe the commission didn't have as deep enough understanding of its role of governance, and that's certainly some of the criticisms that we heard in the public. So that's something that we focus in on. We've identified some action items, so that's number 1. But I think for us, the biggest thing was the organizational excellence, and that is capitalizing on the service that we have. We've got a great service, we've got great infrastructure, and we want to, as a commission, support that and do our role in supporting that. So coming up with, you know, with the transparency, the succession recruitment, the change management, all that was very satisfying.
Chief Melizadeh, I know you come in here and then all of a sudden you get thrown this letter from the minister saying fix stuff. Take us through you know how your perspective of all that went down. I mean, I know you had to deal with it. Talk about the whole process that you went through and how you feel about how this has kind of come to where we're at today.
I'm just trying to think if I should give the politically correct answer or what's really on my mind. But anyways, you know, I came to this job obviously knowing there were issues and we needed to deal with them. So immediately when I came here, tried to figure out what was going on in the department. And immediately we were starting to look at different initiatives that we needed to put in place. Obviously, the discipline process was not good. There were files that were left from many years that needed to be dealt with. The culture of the organization needed some adjustment and retuning. There were a lot of issues between infighting, if I want to call that, between management, the union, and so there were many significant issues we had to deal with. So as a result, we started coming up with different initiatives how we can move the organization forward. So one was the culture piece and the ethics, and the other one was also modernization of the organization to be able to police in the year 2020 at the time, and it's 2022. So we put a whole bunch of initiatives in motion moving forward. And then within a short time, obviously, because of some certain allegations and complaints, Minister Madhu made the decision to ask us for the action plan. So the action plan really, if someone was to critically look at it, wasn't really anything that we were told to just start doing. It was, it gave us an opportunity to compile all the initiatives that we had already put in place to be able to convince the minister and his staffers that we were already engaged on that front of rebuilding, and assure them that we are on the right track. That also, even though it was a lot of work, expensive venture, and took a lot of human resources, but it still validated that to even our employees and the public that we were on the right track. We were making the changes that was needed, from toxicity in the organization to actually rebuilding our brand and moving forward. So that's how I looked at that. And now that we look back on it, I truly believe it was a good exercise for us to go through based on what was going on in the department. And right now we are enjoying much better relationship internally with our employees. We've gone even through rebranding and redoing our mission, vision, values, which is employee-driven, not management-driven, to actually bringing certain initiatives from EDI stuff that we are doing within the department to leadership development that we are providing our employees, to really focus on even the hiring and promotion into actually looking at more character than skills. Skills we can always teach, character is harder. So we are doing a lot of stuff to rebrand, and also another piece was that much more significant community engagement, to be there in the community to make sure we are talking to our citizens, having those frank discussions, and getting the trust from them. So again, I can write a book on that, how we went through this exercise, but that's kind of a Reader's Digest of it for you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for the response, and thanks for the work that you've done, and we're looking forward to the moving forward with the strategic priorities. Do I have any other questions from members of the committee or anyone else? I see none. Thank you very much. I'll give this to Councillor Middleton Hope, if that's okay. Mr. Middleton Hope, be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council receive the Lethbridge Police Commission 2022 report and annual plan as information. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Chair. Any discussions, debate?
I see none.
Call the question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Done. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Next, we have a submission from Luke Palmer, Emergency Preparedness Manager, regarding the emergency shelters. And Mr. Palmer is here for any questions that we may have. Of course, you've all read the information. I guess I'll just ask Mr. Palmer. This has been an incredibly hot summer. Generally speaking, what's your take on how hot it's been and the response for providing an emergency shelter, or at least having a plan?
Certainly, and thank you, Councillor Campbell. This has been a hot summer, but for the most part, it was exactly what was forecasted. Each February, we meet with the Provincial Operations Center segment of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, where they collectively bring subject matter experts, including Environment Climate Change Canada. They gave us the forecast for the year, which we saw was front-loaded with a number of cold lows in June, and that led to a lot of rain. And subsequently, July, August, we saw those heat waves come in, and it's something that we're seeing more frequently. The city has had a number of risk assessments completed in the past that show in the summer we're going to see more days of 30-plus degrees in temperature. And even in the winter, as we start progressing, we'll see a lot of those freeze-thaw events in more frequent manners as well. Something similar to what we saw in September of 2019, I believe, where that massive snowstorm happened. I remember it was up halfway up my fence, and it slowly became our transition of a lot of snow quickly transitioned to what happens when it all rapidly melts. So a couple things at play here, but we're quite confident in the information we're being provided. And at the same time, while this isn't necessarily deemed an emergency that would warrant a state or local emergency, we have powers within our planning that we have in place that we work with the community to make sure that resources and facilities are activated that support the needs of not just certain segments, but the entire population that might be affected by these extreme temperatures, whether hot or cold.
Just curious, what has been the community response? I know you're looking for other areas of, like areas of shelter, like you've got the bus terminal for one and the library is another. What about the other businesses in the city? Are they responding to your requests?
I'll answer that in two parts. The first being what we have in place worked quite well this year. For the most part, the plan would activate and deactivate with the temperatures and the declarations from Alberta Health indicating that we were in a heat wave, and we were utilizing city resources, which we were communicating with to make sure that they're ready to go, and everyone gave us the thumbs up. It's a collective approach that everyone now recognizes the role they play, and that's part of the education angle that we've taken internally, and now we're taking that externally. Some of the mitigation strategies that you've seen in the handouts that we've provided include some of the next steps that we're thinking in the coming seasons here, especially probably next summer. Some of that is what of our partners in Medicine Hat and Edmonton have been doing, where they've been converting fire hydrants into actual potable water for individuals to use and access. Building codes, how we actually build our city, and the materials that are used for that in terms of bringing in heat and keeping that out. But I think the one that we're most excited for is if you're looking in Appendix A of that mitigation strategy, we're actually looking to solicit that involvement from the community. So if organizations, whether it be a faith-based organization, non-for-profit, or just a regular business, want to offer their space in the capacity of a comfort center providing reprieve from hot or cold, they'll be able to complete this survey providing basic details of their facility, the accommodations that they can provide, and then they become a database that we can access. Not only that, we would look to leverage what we have available in the city with the Lethbridge Parks applications, as well as our GIS mapping on lethbridge.ca to get those actually plotted out for people to see ahead of time. That way, if you're hot or you have a power outage for an extended period of time, that's a really quick access point or something you've looked at previously.
Thank you for the response. Councilor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Chair. So just a couple of questions to Mr. Palmer to begin with, I guess. Are you recognizing that we have adequate resources to manage the challenges that you're now recognizing we're being faced with? And I'm talking, part of that might go to Mr. Fox in regards to temporary sheltering and so forth.
I think that's another one I can answer in two parts, Councilor Middleton Hope. The first being, we don't have adequate resources here in the city to run a facility for a long period of time. Within emergency management, we have emergency social services, which is geared to run reception centers for evacuees and other similar incidences where people are impacted by an event. That would be housed or run by an internal group of city volunteers outside of their day-to-day operations. So we would really leverage our annual contract that we have with the Red Cross to help build up our capacity to be able to run those long-term. We're quite confident in those plans. We do need to revise what the emergency social services plan does look like to make sure that that is okay for these events as well. But it is a little bit of a hybrid answer. In some capacity, yes, we have the capacity, but that's only because of some of the external agreements that we have made. We're always looking for more opportunities to do so. COVID provided us with an ability to provide or sign an MOU with the Salvation Army as well, and the Animal Emergency Task Force, a group that, again, a major power outage happens where during a heat wave, people cannot take care of themselves in their own homes, or it gets too hot. The animal factor is now considered as well. Through reaching out and engaging with the community.
Sorry, did you say the animal factor?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we want to make sure that again, individual preparedness, and even from the role of yourselves in council and myself as the Director of Emergency Management, anytime we evacuate anyone from their homes, we are now liable for their property and their livestock, and property would include pets. So we're trying to make sure that we're covering all angles on that side of things. But again, from an internal side of things, the capacity doesn't exist. It gets propped up from a lot of external agreements that we do make.
Okay. Second question is in regards to support from other levels of government. What's that look like?
It's the best it's been in years. I can tell you that the Alberta Emergency Management Agency has totally revised and revamped their Emergency Social Services Group, or PES, the Provincial Emergency Social Services Group. In the event we need to ramp up our internal group, as I mentioned, that volunteer base, we can access that through the province. And that doesn't necessarily require a state or local emergency, certainly aids to that, but we can access any assistance through our field officers here in the South region, which would work its way up to Edmonton if we needed to access provincial resources.
Okay. Third question is impact on utilities. Have we noticed a substantial impact in utilities, either winter or summer, in the last few years? Clearly, people are being charged more, they're using more, I get that, but at the end of the day, in terms of load on the system that we provide, are we noticing a significant impact on that system?
Can't comment fully on it in terms of years past. The only assumption I can make is, given the current climate of this year with utility rates, I would suspect that consumption has probably decreased, but as heat waves are still occurring, people are now conflicted with that choice. Do I run my air conditioning, or do I forego that to save my bills for groceries? We would have to do some follow-up with our utility service here in the city to find out the actual differences on that. Otherwise, we're just making those assumptions.
And to Mr. Fox, in regards to temporary sheltering, I know that you and your group have been working extensively on temporary sheltering. Do you care to wade in and provide us with some insights or some updates?
Through the chair, temporary sheltering is, it does fall under the province, and we continue to work with the province on that. I have not received an update since they had some administrative change at the provincial level, and I continue to work with them. I do have a call later on today, depending on when this meeting is done, if I can make it today. So I'm hoping to have an update sooner than later, and as soon as I get that, I will be updating council.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I see none. I'll give this to Deputy Mayor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council receives the Extreme Temperatures Response Administration Policy and other documents for information. Deputy Mayor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Palmer, for your update on this. I know I'm certainly looking forward to some of the other initiatives that you outlined in the report that are coming forward, particularly the option of looking at fire hydrants as water fountains, as we see going on in other communities. If none of my colleagues have any questions or debate on this.
I do have one question from Councillor Middleton Hope.
Yep.
Yeah, it's actually to the city clerk. Why is this identified as emergency shelters? This doesn't seem to reflect what we've been talking about.
Through the chair, I can probably answer that one. I believe it was going to be changed. As this started off as looking at shelters, but really when we dug into it more and looked at the legal requirements, and it's more for cooling and warming centers. So we looked at the whole population, and this is what we've come back to council with. As far as shelters, that will be in a different report. So I believe that was administrative error in the sense of naming of it. It should have been changed to heating and cooling areas.
So is it, what would you classify it as? Because emergency shelters, as I said, I don't think it clearly articulates what this motion is.
Correct. I would say it is for, maybe Mr. Palmer would have the better language, but it would be the heating and cooling locations. Maybe, do you want to speak to that?
Certainly, and through the chair to Councillor Middleton Hope, when this first came through, there was a confusion in, I think, not just administration, but the city as a whole, the role between emergency shelters and shelters as a whole. When we look at the term shelter, it's very social issue driven. It provides a means of supporting those social issues within the community, What we're trying to solve here, and we're trying to remove the word shelter from it, is as we move into, say we evacuate a community again, it's a reception center. When we're moving into the extreme temperature response side of things, it's a comfort center. So I think a collective way of what we're looking at today is utilizing or referencing the extreme temperature response plan, whether it's hot or cold,
Right.
and providing a means of providing support in the term, getting them out of the elements, in a sense. Not sheltering.
If I requested an amendment to that, to call this the extreme temperatures response, would that be more effective?
I believe so, yes.
We'll just change it in the minutes.
Are you done?
I am done.
Okay. Oh, right. Right. So the resolution stands as it is, and that is correct. So we'll, if there's, and we'll just change the title of the emergency shelters. Okay.
To extreme temperatures response, correct.
Correct. That will be changed. Since there any other debate or questions? I see none. I assume that is your closing, Deputy Mayor, and we'll call for the vote. Question's been called. All in favor? Done. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.